everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 11 of My Hero Academia Season 6, and I woke up this morning, I was like, you know what, it's festive, it's nearing the holiday season here in the United States, I'm gonna wear my festive Decemberween sweater. If you like Homestar Runner, you'll probably get the joke. But I'm gonna wear it and pour myself a big old giant honkin' mug of coffee and really sit down and enjoy this episode because this season's been great so far. I've loved this season. It's been wonderful. Bones has done a really good job adapting from the manga to the anime. The animation's been good. I've had a lot of fun with this season, and the content of this season's great. I think it's some of my favorite stuff from Horikoshi, so I'm like, yes, please. But I do have a few comments before we start this episode. Where we last left off at, Toga and Ochako are facing each other. Shigaraki is facing Deku and Bakugo and everyone. Bakugo's been injured. Endeavor is like getting worn out, and Shoto's had to step in and hold both him and Bakugo together. Deku and Shigaraki have been fighting internally, and now they've separated apart. So it seems like the battle is maybe reaching a climax, whatever that entails. And we're not even to the end of the core yet. So, but you know what? Horikoshi may have some surprises for us. Who knows? Who knows? It's My Hero Academia, so you just can't ever be sure, right? But I do have a few comments before we start. One of those comments, unfortunately, I will have to talk about in the spoiler corner, so we're going to save that one. But the other one is really, really funny because I talked in the last episode or 2 episodes about how you could see like Shoto and Bakugo and Deku and them playing volleyball. And I was like, that'd be a cool crossover. I mean, we've had a baseball crossover with My Hero Academia. Why can't we have volleyball? And I was like, oh, Shoto could be a setter. And then Morales commented and we're like, oh, kind of like Kinma? And it took me a second. It took me a second for like the gears to turn in my brain to process me be like, why Kinma? And I was like, oh! So if you don't know, Kinma, who is a setter in Haikyuu, which is a volleyball anime, his voice actor is the same voice actor as Shoto. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forget that because Kinma, the voice actor for Shoto is also the voice actor for Eren Yeager, the voice actor for, the voice actor for May from Ace of the Diamond, and he plays like this very distinct type of character. Kinma is not that character, although Kinma and Shoto are kind of similar, so kind of makes sense. But yeah, I thought that was really funny, so thank you, Morales. Like I said, the other comment I can't talk about until spoiler corner. We'll talk about it then. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how are we going to. The battle looks like it's at its climax. What are we going to do? How are we going to finish this out before we go into the next core? What's going to happen? So, we'll find out. So, as always, we'll do a reaction to this video, and then I'll come back for spoiler corner. But, oh, y'all, I'm ready. Let's do this. So, we're going to start episode 11 of My Hero Academia Season 6. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's... You know what? Let's do this. I've waited so long. I've waited years. It's been at least a year, but Oh, that was worth it. I was joking in the last several episodes in the spoiler corner. I'm like, damn it, if they make Dabi's dance just like him in a still, like just moving from side to side. No! They choreographed all the dance moves. The voice actor for Dabi, I think, deserves all of the praise because we're finally seeing an unhinged side to Dabi that I'm like, yes, it's been there all along, but it's been teased this last season and a half. You're like, no, there's kind of an unhinged side to Dabi. And we've been waiting on it. and so that's hard because Dabi up through these seasons has been this kind of quiet, very like keeps to himself, very reserved sort of villain. That he does have moments where he kind of gets like cocky and everything, but you don't ever really see like the madness of Dabi come out until this moment, and it's like, oh, and finally we can finally talk about it. He's Toya Todoroki. It's official. It's there. We made it! Because, yeah, I remember when this chapter came out. When these chapters came out, this set of chapters, Dabi's Dance, when these came out, I remember, I don't even think they told us the title of this episode until the very end. I don't think they did. Did they tell us the title of the episode? We'll go back through this and see if they actually told us the title of the episode. But when these chapters came out in the manga, I remember that myself and several other people, we were talking about it. It's like, ever since like season 3, you know that Dabi is Toya. Ever since season 3. Like, I feel like the audience knew, right? Because you had, like, the blue fire and everything. I've watched Semblance of Sanity's reactions to My Hero Academia, and I know that Caleb was like, I wonder if that's Toya. And I'm like, right? And so I can't wait for them to watch this, because I know it's going to be, like, confirmation, right? But here's the thing, and this is kind of the fun thing about this, is that Horikoshi knows that we know that it's Toya. He knows that we know. He's known for years that we know. And what Horikoshi does that's so fun is that he keeps leaving like these breadcrumbs, being like, okay, you all know it's Toya. Now here's a little bit more about him. Here's a little bit more about Toya. Here's a little bit more about the Todorokis. Because in order for Toya's reveal to really sink in and have the maximum effect, you need to have spent all this time with the rest of his family to learn about their family dynamic. And so when we met Endeavor at the start of this series, you can instantly see why Toya would have ended up the way that he was because of Endeavor's actions. Like from season 1, I'm not an Endeavor fan personally, but I feel for him in this arc because it's like it's all crashing down, right? I feel for it. And I mainly feel for his family because Ray in this episode, like her son, her firstborn son, who they thought died in a fire that cremated him, that she's like now realizing that no, her son's been alive this whole time and he's a villain. Natsu, who grew up with him, who does not like his father and has blamed his father for Toya's death, now knows Toya's alive, so he's dealing with that. Fuyumi, who's the second born, who's been around Toya the longest out of all the siblings. We don't know a lot about her and his relationship at this point, but anytime you find out that a sibling you thought had died is there and alive, you're like, oh, well, crap, now what? And then you have Shoto, who didn't even know Toya. He never knew Toya. But despite not knowing him, what Dabi says about Endeavor, Shoto's like, you don't even know. So it's like, God, it's such, but you had to spend time with the family to figure out the dynamic, and everything Horikoshi laid out with keeping up with we all joke about keeping up with the Todorokis and their family drama. Their family drama is the most iconic in this whole series. It's like my favorite thing about this series is the Todoroki family drama. It's absolutely ridiculous. And like Deku said, Shoto could have been the main character. This is like main character stuff, right? You had the big dramatic reveal that one of the brothers of the main character is actually this villain. It's something that would happen to the main character of a series. And here it's happening to Shoto, who's not the main character. And Deku's just like, oh God, I gotta deal with this now too. My best bud's family's got issues. But we've spent the last 2 seasons building up the keeping up with the Todoroki family drama, like everything. And we've been building up Endeavor's path towards atonement. That he's like, I realized I was a really shitty father and I've not been doing a good job of being there for my family. So I know you all can't forgive me, but I'm going to try to do right by you all and become a better person. And then Horikoshi's like, yeah, just as you think you're going to become this better person, Dabi shows up and he's like, the past doesn't die. And it's like, because Dabi's like, no, that you don't get to just say the past didn't exist. Which, to be fair, Endeavor's not saying that. And we should talk about this because there's a lot of what Dabi says that it's like, and then there's a lot of what he says it's like, well, and I love Dabi. Dabi is maybe one of my favorite characters in this series because he's such a dramatic bitch. He's so extra. There's so much extra that he does in this that I can't wait to talk with you all about and break it down. But he's such a flawed character. And honestly, flawed characters are some of my favorites because you can kind of break them down and say, okay, why are they doing this? They don't realize they're doing this. What's happening here? He's great. And I've waited for this episode for so long to tell you all, and I feel like Horikoshi has waited so long because, like I said, when this chapter of the manga came out, all of us, primarily like 90% of the people in the discussion, because I was on the discussion forums at the time, everybody was like, yes, we all knew this moment was coming. It's just like, when is Horikoshi going to drop the bomb? And he drops it at the worst possible time, which is the best. He drops it when Endeavor's at his weakest. Can't fight full strength. Shoto is emotionally like trying to keep track of his best friends. He called his father dad for the first time in this episode. Shoto called Endeavor father for the first time. And it was in front of his older brother. When that happened in the manga, it was just like emotions. It's like, no, because Shoto's always been like, he's never called Endeavor father. And here he does, and he's worried about him. This one moment, Shoto's like, you need to get out of here. You do not need to be here. And Dabi's like, no, let him stay. Let him stay. And it's like, ah! So yeah. We need to talk about this episode. There are a few things. Obviously, we're going to have a spoiler corner. Don't worry. There's still spoilery things to talk about. I do feel, if I had one negative thing to say about this episode, it's the best genist part, because we won't get the full story until probably the next episode. But in the manga, you don't know that it's best genist that's standing there. You don't know at all. It's like a shadow. And I wish they'd kept that, because it kind of spoils the surprise. I'm like, Bones, why are you spoiling your own series? What are you doing? So I wish they'd kept that a secret. I wish they'd kept him in the shadows. And the other thing I wish they'd done is at the end, when Dabi's about to attack Endeavor, I wish they'd just cut it off right then and there. You could have stretched out that recap a little bit longer. You could have stretched that recap out just a wee bit longer to cover the fact that you reveal best genus at the start and at the end. You could have done that. I think, Bones, you got a little overambitious. You were trying to put too much on the audience at once. I'm like, no. Even Horikoshi knew in the manga to not let the audience know until the moment that it comes. I'm like, come on. Nah. So yeah, I do think that Bones maybe I think Bones messed up a little bit in revealing best genus now. I think they should have saved it for the next episode. I think that would have been much better. But maybe they're worried their fandom will forget. And in all the Dabi mess, they'll forget about best genus. Because honestly, chapter to chapter, it was kind of easy to forget about that. It was like, oh yeah, that was who was revealed back then. But I'm like, come on, treat your audience like they're a little bit smarter, Bones. They are smarter than that. They can remember. So that is the one beef I have with this episode, is I think they should have just kept best genus in the shadows at the start. And I think they should have extended the recap just enough to cover, and then cut the episode off with Dabi attacking Endeavor and about to attack him, and then cut it off there. Think that would have been a better cliffhanger. I'm just saying. Not trying to tell Bones how to do their job, because they're doing really good with everything else, but storyboard wise, I wouldn't have revealed so much. I would have kept a little bit in the dark, but so yeah, I like that this guy flying the plane says, I'm not Hawks or Mirko. I can't go that fast. I'm going as fast as I can. So see, when he looks back here, you see this person in the shadows, and we all knew, I think, reading the manga, that it was best genus, because he says your body hasn't completely recovered yet. There is still the question of, Dabi made the point of saying Hawks killed best genus, so what do we do with that? But they didn't reveal who it was. And I like that they show best genus with the belt buckle and everything, and then they don't show his head, like we're not gonna figure it out. Like the belt buckle that says BJ on it. We're like, well, I wonder who that could be. Could that be the blowjob hero? Like, what do you think it's gonna be? You know? God, keep this PG. I'm just so giddy from this episode, because I as much as I did like the stuff with Nejiro showing up and Shigaraki, I was like, get to Dabi's dance, get to Dabi's dance, get to Dabi's dance. It took us 10 damn minutes, but it was worth it. Worth it so much. So yeah, I do like the animation of Shigaraki and Deku falling. It's great. Shoto pulls his weight in this episode. Shoto and Endeavor, keeping it with the Todorokis, they're having a time. Because Shoto's just like, I'm going to save everyone. Shoto's like, I didn't skip arm day. I'm going to hold Bakugo, Deku, and Endeavor with my arms and legs. I also find it great that Yuki Kaji is Shoto's voice actor. There were several moments in this. Now that I've seen Attack on Titan, back when I recorded season 5 for this channel, I had not seen Attack on Titan yet, so I wasn't aware that he voiced Eren Yeager for Attack on Titan. Now that I know that, I was wanting to see this episode, because I know that Shoto yells in this episode, which is a rare feat for Shoto, and I wanted to see if I could hear Yuki Kaji's voice as Eren. you can. And I was like, oh, because Yuki does a really good job of voicing Eren, who has very emotional moments in that series. And Shoto's, for the most part, very calm and quiet. So when he gets like an emotional outburst, I was like, oh, is Yuki going to be all going all out? He does, and it's great. And I was like, yes, good. The voice acting in this episode was wonderful. And then, of course, Endeavor's voice actor has the very stereotypical Japanese anime dad voice, where it's the very deep, resounding voice, like the voice of, this, fatherly figure. And here it's like, and then Dabi's like that theater kid that dropped out of college. And it's like, I'm back, baby! And it's like, ah! So yeah. I love that everyone around Shoto, as he has him on the ground, is just like Endeavor's trying to cool off, like barely there. Bakugo's bleeding from the mouth. Deku is like trying to like army crawl his way towards Shoto, and he's just like twitching. And yeah, so Bakugo's alive, and Deku's like, I've got to get next to Shigaraki, which I think is interesting because Bakugo's now like, I need to be by Shigaraki. He's looking for me. And Shoto's like, well, shit, Shigaraki's not dead. He's not dead yet. And then Deku's just like shaking, trying to keep himself steady, right? And here's the thing. It's like, Tomura, you don't. And he's like, I won't do what you say. So at this point, that's interesting. At this point, because I haven't gone back and reread the manga until watching this episode because I wanted to have it all be as fresh as possible. Shigaraki in this moment, he is wanting to keep fighting them. And All For One is saying, no, you're at your limit. They are not. You need to stop. So I think that's interesting that All For One's been around the block long enough to know when a good time to stop is. He's like, I've had to run away many times, Shigaraki. I know when we need to go and recoup. You do not. So you're still thinking that you're all powerful and can do this. And he's like, no, you can't. Let's leave. So that's really interesting. And he's like, I won't do as you say. Woo! Yep. And then I like that Nejiro's like, sup, bitches? I really like, again, it's so funny because you have Endeavor, who is this like very imposing, traditionally, like stereotypically masculine character. And then his kids, like Natsu has like the most blocky face, like Endeavor, which is funny because Natsu doesn't like him. He likes him probably the least. But then like Shoto and Dabi both have very like more like pretty boy faces, if that makes sense. Like they definitely take after their mom a lot more in terms of their looks, which is, oh my God. But then yeah, Shoto with his fluffy hair. I'm glad that Shigaraki's hair has grown out long enough that when Gigantomachia gets him, Shigaraki's like, hey, what's going on? Or Spinner's like, hey, Shigaraki, what's up? And Ida and Nejiro show up, and Nejiro was just like trying to help. And I forgot that Nejiro's mentor was Ryuku, who's the one that can turn into a dragon. I forgot that was her mentor. And so that gives her a personal connection to this battle. But then Ide shows up and he's like, still got the arms going. I love that character stays consistent no matter what. And he's like, Gigantomachia is coming this way. He's almost like C-3PO off Star Wars. He's like, hurry, we need to get out of here. Shoto Todoroki, where are you? And so then, yeah, Rocklock's got Aizawa. And they're like, get him out of here. And, oh man, poor, I like that Ryuku's arms are in ice to try to, like, heal them. And Nejire Hato, she's like, when she sees Ryuku, she's like, she gets all, like puffed up like a little badger. She's like, all right, I'm gonna help save them. Okay. She reminds me a little bit of Mount Lady, Nejire does. And then Deku's like, I need to be with Shigaraki. Which is interesting because he's like, Shigaraki is still after me. He's like, if I leave, he's going to follow you. So I need to stay with him until we do something with him. But there's also kind of like this double meaning because it's like now Deku is like, I know that Shigaraki and I are connected. So we'll talk more about it in Spoiler Corner. But I thought that was interesting going back and looking at it. And Shoto's like, okay, his regeneration's slowing down. He's getting weaker. We could still fight him. Shoto's like, Nejire and I could do this. He's like, and he tells Hato to keep pressing him. And then that idea of maggots keep crawling out from the woodwork. And Shigaraki's like, eh. And at this point, whenever Shigaraki does the smile like that, that's not Shigaraki. That's not Tomura. That's All For One at this point. And the idea of maggots crawling out, All For One thinks that everyone is beneath him. So it kind of makes sense why it would be him at this point. And we do get confirmation when he sees Gigantomachia. We see that it's All For One inside. So lots of stuff happened in this episode. We cut back to Toga and Ochako, of all things, in the midst of all this. And I really do like seeing this animated. I know in the manga there's been lots of people that have kind of been like, with the message of Toga and all of this. And so I feel like when it gets animated, it does make a little more sense and have a little more bearing. Horikoshi is trying, I feel, to say something with Toga to kind of get across it. And it's funny because now seeing this animated and seeing how the episode is tied together, there is kind of a message between Hawks and Toga and Dabi about the three of them. And the fact that they all, at the end of the day, are human. And it's interesting, they all are human and they have basic things that they want, but they've been slightly twisted in a way that has made them villains. Like you have Jin, who all he wanted was to be accepted. You have Toga, who wants to be accepted and be loved. And then you have Dabi, or Toya, who wanted to just be accepted and loved for who he was. They all wanted to be accepted and loved for who they were. But because of either their abilities or their personalities or both, society, as the hero world in this story knows it, has rejected them. And it's interesting. I mean, Dabi is a little bit of a special case, and we'll talk about him separate. But with Toga and Jin, they're two characters who just wanted to be loved and accepted by society, but because of their personalities, because of their abilities, they were rejected and shunned. And it just led them to kind of spiral into a crevice that was away from society. And so now Jin's dead. He died because of it, right? He died because that crevice led him to the League of Villains. But now you have Toga, who is questioning. She's like, well, am I on the same path as Jin? Am I going to keep spiraling down that crevice and no one's going to save me? So there's this really cool conversation. We'll talk about it more in spoiler corner, but there's this really cool conversation about Toga and the question of, Jin just wanted to be, saved, but then he gave up in the end. He realized when Hawks was like, oh, I'll help you, I'll help save you, Jin just gave up on that. He was like, no, you can't save me at this point, and just continued to spiral. And I feel like Toga is asking a similar question of Ochako, being like, are you going to save me or are you going to kill me? One of those two, right? And I feel like Ochako, it's not a fair question to ask her because she's like, I barely know you. But Ochako's in the position right now where she's like, yeah, if it was just me and you standing here right now, I think Ochako would be like, yeah, I'll try to save you. But she's like, we're in the middle of an evacuation that's caused by your people that you're guilty by association with. So it's like, I don't have time, Toga, because there's all these other people that need to be saved. And you are not in present danger. They are. So after I get them out of danger, yeah, we can talk about you. And that's kind of the part that's really messed up, is that Toga isn't considering what's going on right now. She's so tunnel visioned, and she's just like, she's kind of selfish, and she's like, I want you to focus on me right now. Let's talk about girls and guys and romance and stuff. And Ochako's like, people are dying. Like, can we save them first and then we'll have movie night? Like, that's where they are. And it's so hard because Horikoshi presents Toga as this character that, yeah, you see what she's getting at. She's like, I love people just like you do. She's like, I just have this quirk and this personality trait that makes me shunned by society, but I have the same basic needs that you do, the same basic emotions that you do, Ochako. So why am I treated differently? And it's like, well, but then in the same vein, she forgets that they're in the middle of this battle and people are dying and Toga doesn't care about them. And Ochako's like, I need to save these people. That's what she's getting at. And I feel like Toga kind of misses the mark on that a lot. She does know that Ochako loves Deku, and she considers them to be similar for that. And so then Toga says, she's like, I love the people I love. I want to become them. And so I took your blood. And she's like, this other lady told me that, what'd she say there? I want to go back to what she's told her there. She said she tried to tell me it was normal, about what was normal for me, and tried to kill me. So in that vein, yeah, I don't blame Toga for using Ochako's quirk, because that lady was trying to kill her and was like telling her, like trying to give her the talk and then tried to kill her. And so Toga did defend herself. But when she tells Ochako this, Ochako's like, I would never use my quirk to kill anyone. And Toga's like, And so there's this interesting discussion, right? It's like the worst timing. I'm like, Toga, you picked the worst time to have this conversation with Ochako while she's trying to save people from this. And then I'm glad that Froggy showed up to help them. I'm glad she showed up. And then she sees the doll that Deku gave her. And Toga's pretty, I'm glad Toga didn't rip the head off of the doll, right? But that, again, she just bit it. She didn't rip it off. She just bit it. And Ochako's like, fine, if you're going to get in my way, give me my doll back. I don't have time for this. I need to go save others. And Toga's like, I've been holding back this whole time as well because I wasn't sure what to do. And so I feel like, just like with Jin, I feel like Toga makes the same decision. I feel like Toga makes the decision, and my dog is wanting me to throw this. I feel like Toga makes the same decision Jin did, that she's like, you're not going to help me right now, are you? So I guess I'm just going to keep it the League of Villains because you're not going to save me. And the part that's horrible about it is like the situation, right? Because I feel like with Jin and Hawks and with Toga and Ochako, I feel like Hawks wanted to help Jin, but he's like, you're also tied up with this group that's trying to kill us all. So you're making it difficult. And with Ochako, she's like, yeah, I want to help you, Toga, but right now I got to save these other people. So why'd you pick this bad timing? Why couldn't we talk about this afterwards? And it's very tragic. And I feel like Horikoshi intentionally makes it like at the worst time because he's just trying to amp the drama up between them. But I feel like Ochako, the conversation between Toga and Ochako is similar to that of Twice and Hawks. And it's a very interesting conversation. And again, we'll talk about it in spoiler corners. But it's the timing of it so awful. And then Toga decides to go back with the League of Villains and to not hold back, which is very dangerous for Toga because she has a pretty strong power, and if she can use the quirks of others, it's not going to be good. But yeah, we cut back to the battle, and you can see All for One is inside of Tomura as Gigantomachia shows up. You can see that he's there, and it's like, okay. And he shows up, perfect timing, Machia, and saying, like, between all the blows, he talks about that he got the, rivet stab. The reason rivet stab was released from the spinal cord. So that's the rivet stab is the quirk that does the tendrils coming out of him that can stab people. It's somebody else's quirk. It was able to auto track to reduce the burden on the mind and the body. It's been done so that basically creates a barrier between him and the attacks where he's not getting the direct hit. The rivets are getting it instead. Okay. Makes sense. But yeah, he's like, Shigaraki's body is in an unpredictable condition. We need to get out of here. And God, I love Shoto's great in this episode because Shoto's like, okay, I love that Shoto's first priority. He's like a cleric. He's like, I got my priority is to heal everybody first, to take care of the wounded here first. Which is so cool because Shoto has a very like battle melee style quirk where he could use fire and ice, but instead he's the one treating the wounded. I love that. I love that Shoto's like, I'm going to define myself as a hero, not just by what my quirks can do, but by the first aid and the medical treatment I can give others. And I'm like, look at you, Shoto. Look at you. Look at you. And he's like, I got to take care of the wounded, but first I'm going to get them out of the way. And then, yeah, the quirk surge. Again, All for One knows what their quirks are and what they can do, but then again, we've speculated there's a traitor on the inside, so he would have access to that information. Okay. But he's like, Shigaraki's body's at his limit, and they're not letting him rest, so it's not going to be good. And I love, what do they call that? That attack, I forgot that attack between Nejire and Shoto working together. They called it, green flood or jet kindling. Yeah. Why'd they put green flood on the screen? That part was weird. I was like, green flood? What's green? I thought it was spring for a second, but it's jet kindling and that together. In the manga, they give it a really cool name, and the panel for the manga looks really good. But that was a little bit confusing. I'm like, is it supposed to be an S? Spring flood? What is happening? Use English, Bones! Like, no. And then Endeavor, he senses Machia coming at them and tells them to run. And then, yeah, there's Machia with his mole fingers, his bugles attached to his fingers. and Nejire and Shoto get thrown out of the way. Luckily, Nejire can, like, she can catch herself in the air. And then Ide is like, oh no, Shoto, Nejire-chan. I love, too, that Bakugo. I scrolled down in the comments on Crunchyroll when I was done with this episode because I can't be spoiled at this point. But I scrolled down the comments and someone commented on Crunchyroll about Bakugo when Ide is holding him. He's like, Bakugo's like a cat when you try to hold him. He's like, let me down, put me down. I was like, it's so true. Bakugo's like a damn cat. And I love Ide's like, oh, you're awake? And he's like, I said put me down. And he's like, I need a complete, flawless victory. I'm like, damn it, Bakugo, you're like dying. And you want to still get your victory. And then Machia like retracts the mole fingers. And I don't know, the animation was really cute. But when he opened up his little palm and there was Shigaraki there, it was like Thumbelina. He like opens it up and there's little Shigaraki in Machia's palm. It felt like a moment from Don Bluth's Thumbelina. It was really cute. I don't know how else to describe it. And he's like, what's your next order? I will do as you command. But Shigaraki's like about to pass out, so he hasn't given the order yet. So Machia's like, okay, I made it here. I did what you asked me to. I've showed up. Where do I go now? What do I do? He's just like he has an ultimate machine that just waits to be programmed. It's it's actually terrifying because Gigantomachia will not do anything unless he's told to. So that's the scary part about him. It's like, what's he gonna do? And then I love Spinner's like, Shigaraki! At this point, he's the most concerned about Shigaraki, Spinner is. He's like, what happened to you? Imagine you haven't seen Shigaraki in months, like Spinner hasn't, and then you show up, look over your shoulder, and there he is, like just a beaten, mangled, cremated pulp, looking not too unlike Dabi, might I add. And Shigaraki's like, what's happening? And then whenever Endeavor lands, the first thing he asks is, are you all right, Shoto? With Deku. Like, again, we've been setting up these last few seasons, Endeavor caring more about his kids. He's talked with All Might and realizing what he needs to be a symbol of and everything there. And I like that. You know what? Now, we all speculated in the manga, and I don't know if I've talked about this or not, but we speculated, like, the gauntlets on Endeavor's arm, one of them's missing. The gauntlets are very similar to how Dabi has designed his own outfit. And it's like, it's all there. But yeah, he's like, are you all right, Shoto? And he's like, yeah. And then he's sitting there thinking, he's like, I'm sorry, Hawks. It's my fault this guy started moving. Again, there's a lot of people that ship Endeavor and Hawks. I can't for personal reasons. I'm like, I just can't because I ship Hawks and Dabi. So it's really hard. But I could see, like, Endeavor has so much faith and reliance on Hawks. Like, he really respects Hawks because he is, at this point, the number 2 hero. And so I really love that. I can totally get where the shippers come from. Where if they ship Endeavor and Hawks, I get it. I see it. I just can't do it. But he's like, this guy started moving. I must defeat him. What kind of quirk does he have? I have to figure it out. Like Endeavor's trying to figure out Machia. Like, okay, how do I defeat Machia? How do we get everybody out of here? What do I need to do? He's like going through the checklist of like, here's the things I have to do because he's like, one of my lungs have been crushed. So Endeavor can barely breathe. He's barely holding on, which is why Shoto's had to carry him around everywhere. And he's like, what do I do? He's like, how much can I do with a body that hurts to breathe? Well, and then the breath's about to get knocked out of him again by Dabi. And he says, just watch me, that flashback. And he's like, I'm the number 1 hero, so I have to do it. And then as he's going on this big monologue about being the country's top hero, we cut to Dabi just popping up off the back of Machia. Dabi's been sitting there shaking up this bottle of hair, color remover this whole time, being like, yeah, you're the number 1 hero, huh? In the manga, it's fantastic. In this, it's fine. But in the manga, it's just like, oh my God, we're doing this. He's like, oh, there you are. He's like, oh, from up here, everyone looks tiny. Again, man, Dabi, what a theater kid. He's like, oh, and Shoto's here too. Oh, you mean I get to do my dramatic reveal in family history in front of my dad and the little brother that I hate? Oh my gosh. Oh, it's great. And Shoto's here too. And the moment in season 3 when he said, by Shoto Todoroki. At that moment, everybody was like, oh, it's Toya. But it's great. We finally get the reveal. And he's like, oh, the League's here too. Oh, well, Endeavor says the League's here too. And he's like, Dabi. And the moment that he says Dabi, that's so great, because the moment Endeavor says Dabi, Dabi's like, you didn't even know I was your son this whole time. Like, we all knew Horikoshi was going to do a dramatic damn reveal, but this has been the best. He's like, don't call me that. And he's like, I've got this splendid name already, Toya. And the episode is called Dabi's Dance. That's when they revealed it. Toya. And that's, I can't remember if the chapter ended with that one shot and then cut to the next one where it's Dabi's Dance or what. But yeah, of course we get Shoto and we get Dabi side by side. So yeah, it all comes out. I've been saying this in the spoiler corner. It all comes out that the reason that Dabi had Skeptic come with him this whole time was so that he could air this video. This video that he made. I just imagine that Dabi's had on his person this flash drive with this video clip he made from day one. He was like, how do I get this to be publicly transmitted? Or the moment he found out that Skeptic had this ability, he was like, oh, I'm going to make this video and get Skeptic to publicly release it onto all the satellites so everyone can see it. But yeah, I love that Horikoshi, like, because when he grabbed Skeptic, I was like, okay, well, he's one of the big wigs of the Liberation Front. Not really the biggest, but he's one of Verdestro's right-hand guys, so I guess it makes sense why I grabbed him. And now when this chapter comes out, it's like, oh, he plotted this whole time to get him to do this. Gotcha. And so, yeah, it's brilliant. It's genius, like, having it. And God, poor Ray. And then we see Dabi. And I love that Dabi's like shed the coat to the side. He's taken off his coat, put it to the side, because he wants everyone to see his scars. Everyone to see his mangled body. They want him to see it all. And I love that he's got he's doing like this pray pose before, like he's like praying. Dabi's an actor, for sure. There's a lot of truth in what he says and a lot of true emotions, but he has a flair for dramaticism. And he is making this video paint him as sympathetic as possible. And granted, there is a big chunk of his story that is very sympathetic. And we'll talk about that. But it's like there's a big chunk of his story that's sympathetic, but then there's another part it's like, he's a villain. But he's making this video, make him come across as sympathetic as possible, because his whole intent is to shatter the hero society and this image of their number one hero, who's Endeavor. And granted, yeah, Endeavor, it's been this little like edging on the edge of the cliff. Like, we all know as the audience that Endeavor is insanely flawed and has done some horrible things in his past, and things that the public in this world doesn't know about, that it's like, yeah, if they found out, they'd be like, And Dabi's like, yeah, no, I'm about to reveal it all and then see what y'all do. And he frames this video like, oh, you all make your own choices, but I'm just telling you, this is my side of the story. And here's what I think about hero society and about your number one hero. And you all make your own judgments. It's like this news pundit version of Dabi, right? But Ray. And it almost like when her eyes lit up, it's almost like she recognizes something's up. And he's like, my name is Toya Todoroki. Oh, and she's just, and Ray. I hate it, because we don't really see Ray in the manga and her expression, but her expression here, he's like, my father's the number one hero, Endeavor. And we see the blue flowers that he gave her. Endeavor in this whole reveal is just, oof. I don't like Endeavor's character. I think he's terrible for what he's done in the past. I respect that he's trying to make himself a better character. I respect that he's trying to atone. And I do feel bad for him in this episode. From here on, really. I feel bad for him, because it's like he finally makes the decision to make himself better and try to atone for his past. And then his past comes walking up to him to smack him in the face and say, nope, you don't get out of it that easy. And it's like, ugh. But man, this whole sequence, he's like, my face ended up like this, but I thought my family would realize who I was. And that is kind of like really sad in a way, because Dabi's like, I'm still your kid. You didn't recognize your own son. And he didn't. He thought he was dead, but he didn't recognize him. And that's kind of like this interesting symbolism that Endeavor gave up hope that his son was alive and never even considered the possibility that was Dabi at all. And it's this really cool symbolism that Horikoshi does, where you have Endeavor, who you had All Might, who is the symbol of peace. And arguably the fandom believes that Endeavor is a symbol of hope. And you have this character that's supposed to be a symbol of that emotion, hope, and then yet he lost hope of ever seeing Toya again. And then Toya is like, I've been here the whole time and you didn't even see me. Which again touches with Dabi's whole thing of, you never saw me, you only were after the perfect child, which wasn't true. But we'll talk about that, because like, you didn't realize who your family was. It's so cruel. It is cruel. And he's like, it's so sad, really. Oh, his voice actor. And then Deku's like, wait, the family drama. Like, Deku realizes, he's like, Toya, that sounds familiar. And they're like, yeah, that was our brother that died. And Deku's like, oh shit, this family's got some issues. And Deku's just like, oh, that's Toya. He's his brother. And he's like, I was born as Endeavor's oldest son. Mm-hmm. And I like that in this episode we get both Toya and Endeavor's opinions about this. And Ray, and he says, up until now, I've killed over 30 innocent people. And that's the thing. That's the thing. He's like, why did I commit these offensive acts? That is the thing, that no matter what he says at this point, and yeah, it's horrible what has happened to him, and we'll talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's like, Dabi, you didn't have to kill those 30 innocent people. You didn't have to do it. But he did. He did kill them because he made that choice. It's awful what happened to him, and I don't commend Endeavor at all. I condemn him a lot for what he did as far as Toya's upbringing. But he didn't have to kill the innocent people. And he tries to frame it as, oh, I did it because my dad was awful. And it's like, it doesn't matter if your dad was awful. You didn't have to kill those people. So at the end of the day, there is like, yeah, you had a really bad upbringing, but that doesn't justify you doing those actions, right? It doesn't, because it doesn't make you any different than any other villain, right? And he's like, that's what I want to share with you all. And he's like, Endeavor yearned for power. Yes, he did. Mm-hmm. And from his despair at being unable to surpass All Might, in order to have a child with a stronger quirk, he forced his wife to marry him. And there's truth to what he says. There's truth to what he says. And then it's interesting because we see that there is a little bit more to it from Endeavor's side. So there is truth that, yeah, Endeavor was blinded by his jealousy and wanting to surpass All Might. He did marry Fuyumi, or he did marry Rei to have Fuyumi, Natsu, and Shoto in them to try to have a child with a stronger quirk. That's all true. Absolutely. But we know that there's an extra layer to it, that Endeavor did like Rei. He made an effort to, he didn't lock her in a basement or anything to make her have kids, but he did make an effort to connect with her and to love her. It didn't work out. But there was an effort there, but it is true that he wanted to have a kid whose quirk could surpass All Might, right? But we find out another layer of it from Endeavor as this monologue goes on. But what he's saying right now, he's like, I was created for the sake of my father's selfish dream. And then we see it as we see all this destruction, which again, but apparently I was a failure. And he gave up on me long before, and I was abandoned and forgotten. Well, not necessarily. We'll talk about this when we get Endeavor's side of the story. But yeah, there is truth to it. But the funny thing is, this whole time when we have this like truth, it's juxtaposed. It's juxtaposed with this image of death and destruction in the city. And it's like, your truth about your family, blah, does not justify you killing all these people. It doesn't. Like, yeah, it's sad and it's awful and we should condemn Endeavor for it. Absolutely. but you shouldn't have had to kill all these people as well. And he was reveling in it. So he was so excited to go find Endeavor, he didn't care about all the others dying. That's kind of like the deal with Toga, right? She wants Ochako to relate to her, and you feel bad for her, and you agree Ochako should try to relate to her maybe, but then she's forgetting about all the people dying because of what the group she's involved with is doing. So it's kind of like, it's like you guys are missing the forest for the trees sort of scenario. But I also like that we cut back to the just look boy who doesn't have a name, and he was watching videos of Endeavor when this popped up. I feel so bad for him because, yeah, it's like he's trying to shake all the Endeavor fans to their core, being like, your hero is a fraud. He's like, but I did not forget. Without being told, I watched you this whole time. And Shoto's like, oh my God. He's like, I'm not saying that everyone must be completely without fault. Just you. And that is something. Dabi's like, yeah, no, everybody's at fault here, but Endeavor is especially at fault. Like Dabi's whole thing is he wants to crush Endeavor. Like that's his whole, he hates his father and he wants to like completely crush him. And Shoto's just like, I'm just now getting to a point where I'm okay around my dad and you spring this on us? What? And so a pre-recorded video of my personal history, his memoir being published, is being played on all the TVs in the country and on the internet. He's like, what a crazy ace up your sleeve. And Skeptic's like, I'm mildly impressed. And then Dabi saying, oh no, I don't know why, but I'm just starting to have fun. And then the dance, the choreography, him moving around and dancing on top of Gigantomachia. It's everything. It's everything I could have wanted. And then he does it's great. It feels like something out of Soul Eater, honestly. It feels like something that like the little gremlin was doing in Soul Eater, where he's like just sitting there dancing. How could I make you suffer? Yeah, how could I trample on your life? As he's dancing around. It's been all I've been thinking about since that day. Like, since the day he died in that fire and was reborn as Dabi, which means cremation, doesn't it? He's been thinking about how to get back Endeavor. He's been planning this Shakespearean revenge since the 80s. He's just been having this plotting. It's all I've been thinking about since that day. And we see Toya on the ground next to, and the thing of it is, we see Toya and his hair is getting whiter and whiter. It's like Marie Antoinette syndrome, and we'll talk about this, but it's the idea that he's in the same pose that Shoto was when Endeavor was abusing him. So we get the idea that he was being abused the same way that Shoto was, and he clinged to Natsu crying. You didn't know, did you? Because you weren't paying attention to your kids. And he's like, and at first, when you completed your puppet Shoto, I thought I'd kill him. So he's like, I wanted to kill my youngest brother because he was your perfect child. He was the child that I couldn't be, right? But then you became the number one hero. And I love it. He's just spinning around dancing. He's like, I wanted to make you happy. It's like, oh my God. Like, he's just crazy and unhinged. Yeah. I was afraid you were going to die in Kyushu. He's like, I didn't want you to die. Like, as he's dancing, he's like, I led Star Servant and Ending to you one after another. So Ending, which is, again, he led Ending to get an Endeavor, but it was by hurting Natsu. And I'm like, Dabi, you just said you clung to your own brother crying, but you were okay with him being injured. Like, he's so obsessed with just ruining Endeavor's life that he doesn't care if he kills his siblings anymore. Like, he's just that far gone. Like, at that point, the revenge has taken over. And I think Star Servant was the one that Dabi sent him, and he was the one that Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto, like, captured the first night that they had their licenses. I think it was that. And, oh my God, even though you wanted to be the number one hero so badly, it must have been a heavy burden. And he just looks over at him, and Endeavor's like, oh, he's like, you were soothed by admiration from the public, weren't you? And I don't think that was it. I don't think Endeavor so much cares about the public admiration. He just wants to be the number one hero he's kind of like Bakugo in that respect. Bakugo doesn't care about what the public thinks. Bakugo doesn't care about what people think of him. That's how Endeavor's always been. But they just want to be number one for their own personal satisfaction, right? To be the top hero. And so I don't think Endeavor was and poor Shoto, when it cuts to him and he's like, the time you spent talking to your kids made you feel the bonds of family, right? And that's the thing too, is that they're trying to mend those bonds, but Shoto's like, do you have any idea what our home life's been like? It's not been bonding with the family. It's been the exact opposite. We've been yelling and screaming at each other. And Shoto's just like, oh. And he's like, you thought you could live properly if you only looked to the future, didn't you? Now that struck a chord. And you could tell Endeavor's like, because that's exactly what he thought. He's like, I'll just atone for my past, move forward, and I can just put the past behind me. But that's Dabi. Dabi is the past. He's like, no. He's like, looks like you don't have a clue, so let me tell you. The past won't go away. In the manga, it's the past won't die. And it's like, yeah, that Dabi is the representation of his past he's tried to abandon. And in turn, Dabi's like, I've been abandoned by you. And he's a physical representation of it. And then he just clicks his heels and he's like, you reap what you sow. And it's like, ah! He's like, this horrible... Dabi is a physical manifestation of everything bad Endeavor has done. And the sad part is that Dabi's a person. So he's become this, but he's inside still his son, right? Oh, God. I love that panel where he's like just grabbing him, you reap what you sow. Oh. And then seeing the two eyes, seeing Shoto's eye of fire with the scar, and now you have Endeavor with his eye. He's like, let's fall together, Inji Todoroki. And he's like, oh, I love that close-up of his face. Come dance in hell with me, won't you, father? I've been waiting for that for so many years. I've been waiting for that line, come dance with your son in hell. It's like, ah. Oh my God. And that animation, it's so good. And it's so good. Oh, and like the staples and everything being stretched. And yeah, Inji's, oh man, it's so good. Inji's face. Calling him by his first name. And then he remembers the fire. The cold, wintry wind, ironically, was dry, so it could spread the fire. That's the crazy thing. You have the cold winter winds, which is the opposite of fire, but it's dry enough to spread it, right? And he said the air was dry and the fire spread. And the fire was so hot it should have cremated his body. And so Endeavor went to where he trained. But Toya burned to death. And all they found, and we see the picture of him as a kid with his hair completely white. And saying it was too hot and there was no body, it should have just been a piece of his jaw. Which brings to light a very disturbing thing, that apparently Dabi did escape, but left part of his jaw behind. Like, that's the thing. Like, the bottom part is reconstructed, that's stapled to his face. Like, the fact that part of Dabi's jaw was burnt off. Which is pretty disturbing. And then we go back to him, his hair starting to turn white as Endeavor's training with him. He's like, did you diet? And he's like, no. And in the flashback, Endeavor looks a bit concerned. He's like, what's happening? He's like, forget about that. He's like, teach me an ultimate move today. And he has the flames. My firstborn Toya didn't get frost, but he had more firepower than me. The firepower he had was greater than mine. So the sad thing is that one, Dabi wanted to train with his dad. Like, Shoto didn't want to train at all. Shoto was like, I don't want to do this. Dabi wanted to. Toya wanted to train with his father, and his firepower was greater at that age than his own father's. He's like, he couldn't negate the overheating, which was a big minus. But I wanted to raise him to be a hero. And then we see, like, you could see just how proud Endeavor was of Toya. He's like, oh, you're stronger than me. You'll be a better hero than I will be. I wanted to raise him. And you can see Ray, and at that point, he's like, at the same time, I continue to hope for the quirk that Shoto gets. And you see Ray being happy, and then you see Fuyumi next to her with the flower. And my wife thought that siblings could support each other. So that adds this layer to it, because the way that Dabi describes the situation, he describes it like that Ray was like a broodmare and that Endeavor made her have all these kids. But that one line that Endeavor says, my wife thought siblings could support each other. She wanted to have more kids. So there's that line that Endeavor's like, the fact of the matter was Endeavor was happy. He's like, I had hoped that we could have had a kid that had, because the whole thing with it is that Endeavor, he realized his own limitations. He's like, I have this firepower, but it has a limit. And once I reach that limit, that's my biggest weakness. So he wanted to have a kid that wouldn't suffer and overheat and be in pain like he was. So that's why he wanted the quirk. And the bonus is, of course, they would probably be able to surpass All Might. Now that little side thing ends up taking over in a lot of respects, his mentality. But at the time when Toya was a kid and it was just Fuyumi and Toya, then he was like, well, yeah, Toya doesn't have the frost quirk, so he can't stop overheating. And yeah, his quirk is stronger than mine, but you know what? I'm going to raise him to be a hero anyway. And he'll be a great hero. Sure. And then his wife wanted to have another kid, so they had Fuyumi. And she's such a cute little baby. So we had our second child, Fuyumi. And there's a point where Endeavor puts his hand in between Fuyumi's and Toya's because he doesn't want Toya like getting, too close to her. He's like, and Fuyumi only had Ray's quirk. But you see Endeavor sitting there with both of them as they were toddlers. And he says, neither of them had the quirk that I wanted, but at the time, I was fine with that. So it's like Toya just had Endeavor's quirk, Fuyumi just had Ray's, and Endeavor's like, that's not what I wanted, but I'm okay with it. I have these two kids that I love. I'm fine with it. It's okay. This is okay. I can deal with this. And then because Toya definitely had more raw talent than I did, he's like, I'm satisfied because Toya has more talent than I, which is so sad because it's like he had more ability. He's like, I entrusted my ambition to Toya. He's like the dad that realizes his kid is better than him at sports. And he's like, well, then you'll become a better basketball player than I was because you have more talent than I could. So and then it starts out so innocently because Endeavor's like, yeah, you can do more than I could. So that there's a side to it that's like, you get it, like the parents proud of their child and they're like, yeah, you can do it. You're going to be better than me. I'm so happy. And at the time, Toya wanted to become a hero like his dad. So it's not like Endeavor was forcing it on him. He wanted to become better. Just like his dad, entrusted that ambition to. But then that's hot. And Toya sees that it burned his hand. Because Toya doesn't have the frost quirk, the firepower, it started to hurt him. And I talk more in spoiler corner, but you can see in that moment Endeavor being like, oh, it hurt him. And you can see the little white patch showing up on his hair. And you can speculate that the white is because he's hurting his body. He's putting his body under so much stress from his quirk that it's hurting him. And this ties to the whole singularity theory, the quirk singularity theory, that eventually the quirks will be too much for the bodies of those that get them to handle. And Dabi is like ground zero of the singularity theory, that his body can't handle the quirk that he's been given. His body can't handle the fire. And it's like, of all people, you should be able to go where I wanted to go. And you see Endeavor where he's been like picking up the pieces of the bridge, like trying to make the bridge to All Might. And then you see an older Toya with red hair go, like a teenage Toya with red hair, go across the bridge saying that you could defeat All Might. And you see an older Endeavor with the beard. He's gotten older, saying my frustration and my jealousy. I couldn't surpass All Might, so I wanted my son to do it for me. He's like, my disgraceful heart. All of it. And Endeavor now realizes what a terrible thing that was. He's like, I should not have put that pressure on my son because I knew my son was going to get injured with his quirk. I shouldn't have done that. But I did. Whew. And now I thought you could smash them all to pieces for me. I thought you could take my frustration and jealousy and smash them by becoming better than All Might. And here we are. But Toya died. And I love that line, Toya died. That's an inexcusable lie. He's like, you can't say it's a lie. And then I love that Dabi's like, well, I'm alive. That's the undeniable truth. He's like, you can say Toya died all you like, but here I am. So what are you going to do? And then he's like, I had a paternity test done. It's like Maury. He's like, you are the father. How could you not realize I was your son? And he's like, and this part, from Dabi's perspective, and from a parent's perspective, yeah, why would Endeavor believe his son was alive when the flames were that hot and they found a piece of his jaw? Why would he believe that? And so as a parent, you can kind of see where Endeavor was like, I didn't want to keep torturing my soul after I knew my son had died with this hope that I didn't think existed. So why would I even beg the thought, which is the tragic thing because there was Dabi all along. But then this adds to it because from Dabi's perspective, he's like, I saw you this whole time. You never realized I was your kid. What? Was it because flame type quirks are a dime a dozen? And that just makes it even worse because Dabi's like, oh, I just had a regular old flame quirk like anybody else, right? So that's why it didn't matter. And then we just saw from Endeavor's perspective that his firepower was greater than Endeavor's, the number one heroes, as a child. So it's like, Dabi, no, your dad was insanely proud of you, but you didn't see it that way. Dabi sees it like, oh, I was just a regular old kid with a flame quirk. Everybody has those. Because, again, and that ties to the fact Endeavor has so many sidekicks. They all have flame powers. It's like, you can easily see where Dabi would go off the deep end with it. Oh. And then I like that the Compress is like, I didn't know about you, Dabi. And then Spinner's like, yeah, no, nobody did. Like, what the hell? I love Spinner's like, I don't know what's going on anymore. Spinner's like, I don't understand what's happening. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. He's like, just wake up, Shigaraki. Let's get out of here. He's like, this is all getting to be too much. Maki's here. Give him some orders. And then I like the Compress is like, oh, you have an interesting lineage too. Shut up. We'll talk about it in the spoiler corner. And then, and he's like, if you don't doubt me, I'll give you blood or skin if you want. Like, he's just ready to rip his skin off for him. But he's like, I've already done the paternity test. I love that Dabi's like, yeah, I've already told the public that I'm your kid. So, yep, it's a 99.99% match from the blood left over at Kyushu. Ugh. It's like, all I can do is speak in a way that will make you believe me. And then I like that he's just like, he just completely forgoes Endeavor's whole thing with his kids. He's like, oh, Endeavor kept making his wife had kids, even though Ray kind of wanted siblings. The question, of course, is, did Ray want Natsu and Shoto? And that's kind of the sad thing, is that it did seem to become a situation where Endeavor was okay when he just had Toya and Fuyumi, but then he realized that Toya was maybe not going to be able to surpass All Might because of his limitations of his quirk, and Fuyumi was not going to do anything. And so he may have still wanted to have children at that point. And then he kept, trying for that quirk. And then Natsu didn't work out because he just had Ray's quirk again. And then he had Shoto, who did. And so the sad thing is in all of this, and when we get to this point here where he's like, the fourth child is someone you may all know, Shoto's like, all of Shoto's frustration he's had these last several seasons with Endeavor, the idea is that it makes even more sense now why Endeavor put all of that pressure on Shoto, because he didn't want Toya to have all the pressure anymore, because he knew Toya's quirk had limitations. And that's the sad thing about it, is that you don't forgive Endeavor for what he did, because what he did was awful in abusing Shoto and his mom. You don't forgive him for that, but it gives another layer that explains Endeavor's mindset. And it's like, oh my God, it's just like the tragedy of it all, right? The tragedy of the Todorokis. And Shoto's just shaking there because he's like, you don't even know. He's like, you finally succeeded with Shoto. And it's like, he even raised his hand against his long-awaited masterpiece, which he's saying he abused him, which he did. I do love that we get this. For the record, this is not in the manga. The scene where Fuyumi's getting comforted by her coworkers, the other teachers there. I love that scene because I was like, what is Fuyumi thinking about all of this while it's going down? I love her teacher friends are there for her. It's so sweet. Like, it's really nice. I like that. He's like, I saw it many times. And he just drops the paternity test. Endeavor's not someone who thinks of others. And we see Natsu here. He's self-righteous and weak-willed, consumed with his own importance. And there is a self-righteous and weak-willed aspect to Endeavor, absolutely. But it's crazy because we've seen with Natsu and that whole arc with him that Endeavor's trying to be more than that. He's trying, but it's like, oh my God, this just brings it all to the forefront. Do you really think someone like that can call himself a hero? Yeah, it's the idea of the hero Endeavor versus the father, and they're very different. It's like, oh my God. But then, just to say, the one boy, look at this boy, is like, we're not that dumb. It's not going to shake our faith in heroes. And Dabi's like, okay, I got another thing too. I'm not done talking. He's like, those connected to Endeavor are the same. And he takes Endeavor's, and the sad thing is, it's the one person that admired Endeavor the most, which is Hawks. And it shows him, and they saved that to show us of Hawks stabbing twice in the back. He got that on film. Again, he didn't save twice because he used twice as another piece to show the masses to campaign against Hero Society. So basically, instead of trying to save twice in that moment, he let him die. So again, there's such a twistedness to it that Dabi, he frames it as, oh, Twice was crying going to his friends and Hawks killed him in cold blood. And we, the audience, know there's more to it than that. But the fact of the matter is Dabi let Twice die for the sake of his campaign against Endeavor and Hero Society. At the end of the day, it's like, but it just adds so much to Dabi's character. It's crazy, but I'm like, you didn't have to show us Twice getting stabbed in the back, and this poor kid seeing Hawks like kill another person is terrifying. He's like, Hawks didn't hesitate to drive a blade through a villain who was crying and running away, but he was running away to help kill heroes. And I love that Skeptic's like, yeah, I did. I love this where he's like, Skeptic's like, yeah, you didn't give me a lot of footage to use. It was hastily made, but the editing was perfect. Prostrate yourself. I love that Skeptic's like, praise me and my skills. Oh my gosh. And then Dabi's like, thanks. Like, just, oh my God, that look. Oh, he's like, you got some great shots with your cameras that were on their clothing. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, Dabi. What a diva. What a diva. And then he's like, oh, by the way, he's like, thanks, Skeptic. I can get back to my monologue to my family as I'm ruining their lives. Endeavor, this is a present from me. I love it. Where he's just like, I did some digging on that spy bastard Hawks. Again, and Endeavor's like, Hawks! If you ship them, just add more fodder. It's like, it's the ultimate family drama ship. You could ship Dabi with Hawks, and it's dramatic. You could ship Hawks with Endeavor, and it's dramatic. But then when you put them against each other, it adds to the drama even more. It's like, what the fudge? In order to get us to trust him, Hawks killed a hero. Can you believe it? Now, this is where Dabi's plan falls apart. Dabi really believed that Hawks killed Best Jeanist. And as we see here, Best Jeanist is not dead. So something about Dabi's master plan, Hawks has managed to go around, right? So that's fun. That's interesting. We'll see how that goes down in the episodes to come. That's why he hid his name and his real past. So we get this idea that his father, Hawks' father, was a criminal and possibly a murderer himself. And his father was caught by Endeavor. And he's like, I don't know what kind of fate that is. That is called Shakespearean poetry, my friends. When you have the son of a thief possibly being saved by the hero whose son becomes a villain. It's poetic. It's just Horikoshi, how dare you. But those are the kinds of people Endeavor surrounds himself with. Oh, it's so dirty. He's like, I couldn't allow it to cover up such shady human nature and call it justice. And again, there is some truth to what Dabi's saying, that all of the abuse and horrible things Endeavor did as a father, covering up by being a hero for justice, yeah, it's not cool. It's not good. But we've seen that there's more to the story than that it's more complicated than that. And Dabi tries to water it down to being this black and white thing, when we as the audience know that there are many shades of gray, and it doesn't excuse Endeavor for what he's done at all, but there's more to it than what Dabi's telling the audiences here in this world. And that's what's so fascinating about it, right? He's like, and calling himself a hero on top of that, and everybody's singing on their phones. I just want you to think about it carefully. Can you blame Dabi? You're all just being used as tools of these dishonorable people for their own self-protection, self-affirmation. And I love that the shark guy goes, look, boy, this is bad. Whoever talks first wins. Whether or not it's true can wait. Ooh, even though it's a villain saying it, how can our faith not be shaken by this? And that poor boy, he's just like, and I love Dabi's like listening to the cries of the people, being like, I'm going to leave early now too. Sorry. There's already been an unbelievable amount of damage done. And he's just like, Dabi's like, yes, all of my pain and suffering has been transmitted to the people. It's because we're watching to not be shaken by this. Like, and I love Shoto's just like, how dare you bring our family in? Because Shoto's a private person. And Shoto's like, it's not anybody's business to know our family drama, but they're heroes. And Dabi's like, it's everybody's business. And just, oh my God, Dabi, that's what's dumb, isn't it? Well, thanks for being alive and well until today. I love that. Where Dabi's like, thanks for still being here. He's like, I want you to be alive to see this. And him jumping down and saying, Endeavor. Oh my God. And Endeavor's like, Endeavor at this point Endeavor doesn't care about the public knowing about what's happening. Endeavor doesn't care about his name being dragged through the mud. That's the thing that gets me in this episode, is as much as I don't like Endeavor, when like all this is going down, Endeavor doesn't care about what the public thinks of him as number one hero. Doesn't care. All he's thinking about in this moment, as Dabi is flying down to face his father, all he's thinking about is, I looked for you. I thought you were dead. You were my son. Like at that point, it's like, oh my God. Oh, it's just, oh, he's like, I looked for you. And Shoto's like, Dad, he's coming. Dad, like he calls him his father for the first time. And Endeavor's like having a panic attack. He's like, I believed you were alive. Like, oh, he's just having a panic attack. And they just draw him breathing so heavy. And Shoto's like, protect Midoriya and Bakugo. He's like, I'll handle this. Hado and I can do this. Hado and I'll fight him. Oh. He's like, please move. Protect them. Like, that's what you need to do. And it's like, he's like, hey, do that later. I love that Shoto's like tears in his eyes. He's like, worry about all this later. We've got a job to do as heroes. And Dabi just lighting up his hands. I love that he lights up his hands like in the prayer motion. And he just is about to do the flash fire fist, the same thing that his father does. And Shoto's like, oh my God. And I like Midoriya and Bakugo's like, this family drama. And he's like, prominence. And he's about to do the prominence burn. And it's like the blue flame, which is hotter than Endeavor's. And Endeavor's like hyperventilating here. And he's just like, oh, he's so enraptured by this, by facing his father. And that's when the beams come down. I really was hoping they'd save that for the next episode. And it stops Dabi like mid-attack. And there's all these beams and then Best Jeanist. I love Bakugo's face looking at Best Jeanist because that's his mentor like, oh, I knew you weren't dead. I don't even know if Bakugo knew he was dead though. That's the thing. I don't think Bakugo knew he was dead. I don't think that he was aware of that. But Bakugo's seeing his, and he's like, Best Jeanist is on the job again starting today. I'm like, I wish they would have saved that for the next episode. I really wish they had. But now he's got the cords around Dabi and Machia. And I guess we'll find out what happens next episode. Although they did add the two, as soon as Dabi makes in the ED, there's the picture of the flowers and the flames, and Endeavor flashes through. We see Toya with the fire fists. And we see that fire transform into the blue flames that Dabi has. Uh-huh. Yep. Mm-hmm. And the image of him dancing like that, it's from the cover of the manga, just so you know. It's one of my favorite covers, is Dabi's dance. God, I love it. So yeah, I do have some spoilers. Even after this massive discussion, I still have some spoilers I want to talk about. But oh my god, y'all, just, it's amazing, right? I freaking love it. So I do have some spoilers I want to talk about. But y'all, this episode was everything I could have hoped for. I'm so glad we can talk about this out in the open now. It's been such a spoiler conversation. I've been like, I don't want to talk about it because there's so much to it, and there's still so much to it that I want to talk about in the spoiler corner, but it's out there in the open now. Cheers. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. If you're not sticking around for the spoiler corner, I'll be back next week with episode 12 of My Hero Academia Season 6. So happy. It's really sad right now because in the manga, Dabi is like burning alive. What timing, right? What timing? As this episode premieres, Dabi is literally burning alive, about to face Endeavor in the manga. It's crazy how the timing works out on that, right? That we first introduced the idea of Dabi versus Endeavor in this episode, and right now in the manga, Dabi is burning himself alive on fumes to get to Endeavor. And in the manga, I don't know. In the manga, I think he's just going to burn alive and die, which is horrifically sad. The question is, as he faces Endeavor, what's going to happen? And I feel like I want closure with Dabi and Endeavor and with Shoto by the end of this, but I don't know if we'll get it. That's the thing. I don't know if we're going to get it. But it's crazy, right? It's crazy, right? Oh my god, but this episode was great. Again, why they showed Best Jeanist and the thing at the beginning and end of this episode, I will not know. I'm like, Bones, you got too much. You get too overzealous. You got too full of yourselves, thought you could do it. I wish they'd kept that a secret, because that was a really cool thing in the chapter that he got stopped by. I guess the chapter ended like that, but in hindsight, I wish they would have shown just like him like about to attack Endeavor and cut it off there. And then, but Endeavor, the animation of Endeavor hyperventilating is really good. I'm so excited now because Endeavor is shaken from this entire incident. His whole core is completely broken. And even later on in the manga, Endeavor is like not like he once was, because now that he knows Toya is alive still, it's just eating him alive, that he feels like he's failed as a father. I'm really looking forward to, I hope in this season, we get the stuff with Ray coming up to Endeavor and being like, our son is a villain, let's do something about this. I'm ready for Ray's like come up, and when she's like, let's do something, come on. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for her to snap some sense into Endeavor. I am waiting on it, right? I'm ready for it. But yeah, Dabi, it's like in Dabi and Endeavor, Dabi inherits so much from his father. He inherits him holding a grudge. He inherits like his will, his attitude, his personality. Dabi is just like an embodiment of it. He's Endeavor's son. Shoto's lucky enough that he gets a lot from Ray. He doesn't get a lot from his father. Shoto's very lucky in that regard, that he has more of his mom's personality than anything. And Natsu is like Endeavor too, but to a different extent. And I feel like Fumi and Shoto have similar personalities, and Natsu and Dabi have similar personalities, but Dabi is Endeavor's child. And I'm really excited to get into Dabi's past and it being explored later in this anime adaptation. But the fact of the matter that we'll get to see that Dabi, it does paint Endeavor in a different light, because Endeavor realized his son had this horrible limitation with his quirk that was going to hurt him. And so he was like, I don't want my son to get hurt, so I'm going to put this all more on Shoto because I know Shoto can handle it. But that's the dark side of it, is that he gets so hyper-focused on that one, he loses sight of the son he has and can't explain that to the son he has in the proper way. And his son doesn't understand. His son's like, well, you put all your ambition into me. Now, what do you mean you're not going to rely on me anymore? I thought that was my job, was to be a hero like you, and now I can't be a hero? And Endeavor makes some really bad decisions. Like, he comes from a place of good in wanting to save his son, but he makes really bad decisions with it. And it's like, he shouldn't have put all the burden on Shoto. He should have sat down and talked with all of them, but he didn't do it right. He messed up. And now it's like, you reap what you sow. And Dabi's like, and I feel bad in a sense for Dabi, because Dabi had all this ambition placed on him. And then suddenly the rug was pulled out, and Dabi interprets it as, oh, I'm not good enough for you. You had to have other kids because I wasn't good enough. And that's not it. But Dabi can't, it doesn't come across to Dabi that way, and Endeavor can't explain it to him like that. And so he takes it to the worst possible extreme, and Endeavor takes it to the worst possible extreme, and it's just a bad decision all around. And it's tragic. This whole family is tragedy. And it's like, oh my God. But there's so much going on in this episode. Like, you have Best Jeanist coming in, and we'll find out later that he did some kind of mumbo jumbo with his organs. That's the only thing with Best Jeanist where I was like, Horikoshi, really? But again, maybe Edgeshot had something to do with it now that we think about it. Maybe Edgeshot had something to do with all that. I don't know. But I was just like, Horikoshi, you just wanted Best Jeanist to be alive. Although, they've not even hinted it at all in the anime yet, which I'm really happy about. But we're going to have the situation where Mirio comes in, where we have Lemillion. And I'm like, yes, please. They've not even hinted at that. I'm like, please don't let that be a big surprise, because that part's really cool, where Lemillion comes in and saves them. That part's a lot of fun. I'm hoping they don't ruin that. I hope they don't spoil it, because that was a big fun part of the manga, seeing that happen. But yeah, Nejire, oh my gosh, the tie back to her and Ryuku, that was great. The stuff with Toga and Ochako, the thing I didn't really want to talk about in the episode itself, because it's kind of spoilery, is the fact that Ochako and Deku are kind of going through the same situation, right? Because with Hawks chose Hero Society and the mission, and that led him to killing Twice ultimately, right? And Twice ultimately resisted till the very end, and it was just they reached an impasse, and Hawks determined he had to kill Twice. With Ochako and Deku and Shigaraki and Toga, I feel it's setting up a similar situation where now, and we're gonna get it this season, where Deku's like, I want to save Shigaraki. I want to save him. He's in trouble and he needs help, and I need to save him rather than kill him. And that's part of Deku's journey that I love, is that he's dead set on saving Shigaraki rather than hurting him, right? At the end of the day, he thinks he can save him. And I feel like Ochako is going to go through the same thing with Toga, her being like, I don't want to defeat you, Toga. I want to save you, but you have to help yourself as well, and you're not doing that. Because, yeah, everything they've done up until now is not, it's lending a disservice to themselves more than anything. So I'm going to be really curious to see how the manga ends up resolving it with Toga, and see what we get with it. Because as we left Toga in the manga, she's like got twice as blood, and it's her and Hawks. And I'm like, is Hawks going to kill Toga? The same, because she's after Hawks because he killed Twice. I'm like, is Hawks going to end up killing Toga, or is Ochako going to come in and try to save her and try to tell Hawks not to kill her? I don't know. I don't know where we're going to be with that. But man, Dabi's dance was great. I am really looking forward to seeing the aftermath of this, because yeah, at the end of the day, the damage is done. Like, the damage is done from this. Like, even if the Look Boy still believes in Endeavor, there are people now in that world, in that society, that do not believe in Endeavor. And Dabi did exactly what he needed to do. He completely shook Hero Society and made them step back and think, oh, do we really support Endeavor? And what else do we not know that's being kept from the public? So yeah, that's just... And then that's the thing. Ever since they said way back a few seasons ago that Endeavor keeps his private life private, and it's like the skeletons in the closet all come out. I'm ready for Rei, though. I'm ready for Rei's moment where she stands up and she's like, our son is a villain and we need to do something about it. There's nothing we can do right now. He's killed innocent people. We have to take responsibility too, because we're his family, and we need to handle this as a family. But man, it is good to see Endeavor be completely rattled by this. Like, him just like hyperventilating. He's only got one lung that's not crushed, so he's having trouble breathing anyway, but him just being like, and I do love that. I do love that Endeavor doesn't care about the public image, about the hero society, whatever. All he's thinking about is my son is still alive right in front of me. And he hates me. And he's trying to kill me. And it's like, And then Shoto, and it's like youngest brother versus oldest brother. And Shoto's like, this ain't been easy. And Dabi even recognizes that Shoto's been abused by Endeavor. He says that out loud. But he treats Shoto as if he's like, well, here's your masterpiece, Daddy. This is your precious prized child, isn't it? He gets to be a hero. So, and it's like, but Shoto suffered so much. And Shoto was inspired by All Might, not by Endeavor. That's the thing. And I don't think Dabi realizes that. Because Shoto was not inspired by his father. He was inspired by All Might, and he was inspired by Deku. That's who he got inspiration from, not from Endeavor. He didn't even care about Endeavor until a season ago when Endeavor talks about atoning. He didn't even care about his dad at all. And now he's like, okay, my dad's trying to be a better person. I respect that. I don't necessarily forgive you still, but I respect that you're trying to be better and you're still my dad. So let's get out of here. And I do like that Shoto's like, Dad, we gotta prioritize. Like he's thinking, oh my God, you're in a bad mental state. But yeah, Dabi doesn't realize, I feel like Dabi feels that Shoto and his dad were chums, like through this. I'm like, no, they were not. And that's kind of, the sad part about it, that Dabi's kind of misinformed on a lot of things. Endeavor has been misinformed. Shoto, like the communication's not been there, and it's just all led up to this. But man, that dance was great. Choreograph was great. I'm not ready to see Toya's past animated. That's going to be really sad. That's going to be really sad. Although, when Toya's past gets animated, it does paint Toya in a little bit more of a, because as a kid, it's like, if you just didn't do this, again, but Toya's just like Endeavor. His son is exactly like him. And the worst possible thing happens. It's like the extremes lead to the worst things. It's like, oh my God. But yeah. The only other thing is Compress. I'm so ready. I'm so excited that we haven't had Lemillion's reveal yet. And we haven't had Compress's intricate backstory. Where he's like, Dabi, I didn't know. Someone else from a famous lineage. It's like, as he's grabbing the mask, I'm like, what a tease show. What a damn tease. Because yeah, as we all know, Compress is one of the hottest guys in the entire series, as it turns out. But he's connected to a thief, too. It's so funny that Dabi's acquaintances, Dabi's connected to Hawks through Endeavor, and Hawks' father was a thief. Compress is connected through Dabi through the League of Villains, and he is a famous thief, and his father was as well, and that connects him to Redestro and the Liberation Front. So it's like there's all these connections. It's like 6 degrees of Inji Todoroki, and it's amazing. But yeah, I love that they just tease us with Compress's history there. It's great. God, I can't wait to take some screenshots from this because it's absolutely wonderful. But yeah, everything here, Dabi, the voice actor for Dabi was wonderful. I loved it. And of course, Hawks is out throughout all of this. But the fact that Dabi was going to use Prominence Burn, we've had, again, at this point, Shoto in the manga, Shoto does not want to kill his brother. He's like, he wants to be the one to stop his brother, but he doesn't want to kill him. And he's slowly coming to realize that Dabi is so extreme that he's like, what do I do? Like, if I don't stop him, how do I defeat him without killing him? Can I even do that? And I don't think we're about to get Endeavor versus Dabi in the manga. I don't think Endeavor can fight him. And Endeavor will say that later in the manga. He's like, I can't fight my son. And I'm like, oh, damn it. I was like, damn it. No, Endeavor's like, I can't do it. I can't hurt my kid. And it's like, it's like Endeavor, after all these years, after him like doing this physical abuse and everything, he's at the end of the day, he's like, no. He's like, I can't do it. It's like, so much in this. But yeah, so I am genuinely excited to see what we're going to get next episode. I'm trying to think if we're going to get Lemillion Mirio in the next episode, or if it's going to be the one after that with Compress. I feel like episode 13 is going to be the cutting point of the core. I figure next episode and maybe the episode after it, we'll get Compress's deal, Lemillion, the kind of resolution with all of this. And then we'll go into the aftermath for the rest of season 6. And the aftermath is great. I love the aftermath. It's wonderful. I'm like, yes, please. Give me all the things. Dark Deku, Bones, don't let us down. Come on now. But this episode was great. I've waited for over a year for this and did not let me down. So, there you go. So, I am excited, y'all. I hope you all are too. But thank you so much for watching this very long discussion and reaction. But it was warranted, right? It was warranted with Dabi and Endeavor. So I'm so excited to hear your thoughts down below, to hear what you all think about it. But I'm going to go rewatch this episode now. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 12 of My Hero Academia Season 6. Bye.